This weekend, the Labour Party celebrated their 25th anniversary of the landslide election victory, which saw the party get into power for the first time since 1979. But Tony Blair's legacy remains deeply controversial, even within the Labour Party itself. Joining me now is John Rentoul, chief political commentator of The Independent, and Tony Blair's biographer. It's good to see you, John. Happy Bank Holiday Monday, and thank you for joining us.
Happy Tony Blair Day, Gloria.
Right, I want to talk to you about where it all went right and where it all went wrong. But let's start with what I know you'll be bursting to tell me. How did it all go right for Labour back in 1997?
Well, because Tony Blair was an exceptional leader, as you know, and he pursued an exceptionally effective political strategy, which was to persuade the other side's voters to vote for him. And that is the eternal Blairite truth. And I understand that Tony Blair isn't popular with the general public anymore. But the Blairite truths carry on being true, and the Labour Party is finally showing some signs of wanting to learn the lessons from the most successful period of its existence.
And Labour haven't won an election since 2005. So what went wrong? We know how they won. They won, but why did they lose?
Well, as Sir Tony said himself, the party departed a millimetre from the correct New Labour course. Gordon Brown was less New Labour than Tony Blair. Ed Miliband was even less, and Jeremy Corbyn even more so. Finally, we are now back on the reverse trajectory, which is that we're getting back to understanding the lessons of Tony Blair's success and trying to replicate them. And the Labour Party is actually making some progress.
The challenges are different, though, aren't they? When Tony Blair was striving for power, he was seeking the votes of Middle England. Today, the Labour Party needs to win the votes of the people it was established for, working class people. It's a very different battleground. Is a North London former lawyer the right man to woo working class Britain?
Well, it is a different battleground, but the essential principle is the same: that you want to persuade the other side's voters to vote for you, and it depends where they can be harvested in greatest number. And yes, it is a problem for the Labour Party that it's lost a lot of its northern strongholds, but it ought to be able to compensate for that by getting the votes of younger, highly educated liberals in the south and urban areas. But the trick is to try and do both, and that was something that Tony Blair was extremely good at, and his successors less so.
So the Labour Party used Tony Blair in a party election broadcast, which they posted on social media. Was that wise? Because, as you said, however popular he was back then, not so much now. That's my essay question to you.
Well, yes, but I think it's symbolic, isn't it? And I don't think that broadcast is going to win the next election for Labour. But it was symbolic of the change, and it was adding to the message that the Labour Party has put the Corbyn years behind it and is willing to learn the lessons from its most successful ever period. And yes, a lot of people don't like Tony Blair, but there are people out there who do like Tony Blair and remember the New Labour years with affection and nostalgia. And I think it's useful, piece by piece, to try and put together that kind of winning coalition again. And some of it will include people who thought that the Blair years were good years and have been disillusioned ever since.
And while we have you, John, you are a veteran Westminster watcher, one of our finest political analysts and journalists. The culture in Westminster, this seems to have turned into a debate about whether it is actually a culture or there's just a few bad apples. What do you think?
Call me a sunny optimist, but I believe in progress. I think Westminster is much more tolerant, inclusive, and a better place than it used to be. And I think one of the huge important marks of that progress was the increase in the number of women as MPs, which happened in 1997. I mean, there was a step change. I mean, that was absolutely transformative. And yes, of course, there are going to be men in particular who behave badly, as there are in all walks of life. But I think it is a much better place than it used to be, and I hope that action is taken promptly to continue that improvement.
I just want to finally ask you about Beergate. Let's give it a gate. The Labour leader says he did not break COVID rules when he was drinking beer with colleagues last year during the lockdown. He insists he was working. He and his team had only stopped for a break and food before resuming their duties. That sounds very like the Boris Johnson defence. Is it different?
It does. No, I don't think it is, and I don't really care very much. But then I don't care very much about Boris's cake either. So, but I do think that the problem is much greater for the Prime Minister because it was his legislation. He broke his own laws. I mean, I know Keir Starmer supported them and actually wanted the government to impose stricter restrictions quite a lot of the time. But it is essentially the Prime Minister who has to take the rap for his own laws and for breaking them. And Keir Starmer's lucky in the sense that the police decided he didn't break the law, whereas the Metropolitan Police in London decided that the Prime Minister did. And I think that's what most people are going to focus on. I think this Tory attempt to try and distract attention is designed to put Keir off, but I don't think it's going to work.
John Rentoul, it's been a pleasure listening to you. Happy Bank Holiday Monday, or in your own words, have a very happy Tony Blair Day.
Thank you.
Cheers, John. Thank you.